Hey Ribs Crew, what's up? So, again to the irregular upload schedule, I apologise, just life outside of YouTube's a bit crazy at the moment, so I'll try and keep it going and get back to a regular schedule as I can. So today's story is a longer story, so it's going to be two, possibly three parts. I'll create a separate playlist for this one and we'll see how it goes. If you like this type of story, please comment below and I can add more like this. Also, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, just suggest it around to people. Let's grow this channel. Let's make it a bit bigger than it is and see where we can go with it. So today's story is called If You See Strange Lights Coming from the Depths of the Ocean, You Better Pray for a Quick Death. Not death. Each year, about 2,000 people perish at sea. Most can be written down to accidental drownings or boating accidents, but a select few are mysterious disappearances. These are cases lost in an ocean of paperwork and unsolved mysteries. One of those mysteries involves a strange sight of light coming from the ocean, an otherwise magnificent sight that ends up being the last thing many people ever see. We call them the Light of Atlantis. The story about the lights is a tale that has spread from sailor to sailor throughout the past century, ignored by most, considered a warning by some. It's not something you'll hear from your neighbour who maybe once set foot on a boat, but rather hushed whispers only heard in the bowels of ships sailing in the ocean. I didn't believe it myself at first, took it as tall tales, drunken misunderstandings, or optical illusions from the moonlight reflecting in the water. But that all changed during my last trip, and now I'll never set foot aboard an offshore ship again. I used to work in a shipping lane that I'll keep unnamed for the sake of explorers who want to test their luck. It was a simple enough job, but the physical toll and weeks spent at sea were punishing enough. Most trips were uneventful, and the most excitement was usually getting to know the old sailor here and there. When travelling across the world, you get to know the odd fella with their own bizarre story. One of these men was named Gerard Price, a man prematurely aged by his experiences at sea, and an alcoholic that could at any time fall off deck and drown. He was the first person to ever tell me the tale of the lights. That's how I ended up here, he said. Those fucking lights, they killed every man aboard our ship. Most of them were just kids too, not yet able to stand on their own 2 feet. They were taken into the ocean, leaving their own futures behind to become one with the depths. What lights? I'd asked. The more experienced men called them the Lights of Atlantis, because they kind of look like they lit up a city deep underwater. More than a few sailors have lost their lives trying to figure out what they actually are. But what I can tell you is that no normal man has seen them and lived to tell the tale. But you've seen them, I asked. He nodded. And you're still here. What does that say about your story? He took another swig of his hip flask. Did you ever consider me normal? He asked back. If you ever see those lights, you better pray you're not chosen, 'cause the only one is ever left alive to keep the story going. The conversation ended there, as the whole alcohol intoxicated the sailor, and he drifted off to sleep, sitting in his chair, though the story had been interesting. It was one I chose not to believe. Gerard was also removed from the crew due to his frequent angry outbreaks and drunken strolls onto deck. He was a hazard, but anyone could have told you the man was traumatized. Still, the story always lingered, and during the next few years, I'd often find myself standing on deck at night, just staring into the ocean. A part of me desperately wanted to see the lights, but if the story was true, we'd better off let it be left dark. But as fate would have it, the light of Atlantis had chosen us. It was the 8th of August 2018. I'd finished a day shift, and we were approximately halfway through our journey. The end of our shifts usually concluded with a few beers on the deck, as the sun set under the horizon. Usually, the light faded from the sky. It would be replaced by thousands upon thousands of small glimmers, breaking through the void of night. The stars would appear in symphony of beauty, only to be challenged by the few clouds on an otherwise perfect night. We stood there in awe of the galaxy we'd seen hundreds of times before, but the magic never faded, except on that one night. A dim light interrupted the spectacular, one coming from the ocean itself. "What is that?" my co-worker Eric asked, as he pointed at the ocean. There was a perfect round light emerging from the depths, just a few hundred feet below, shining up through the uniform darkness. "They're lights," I whispered in shock, the memories coming back to me. "Whoa, they're kind of beautiful though. Any idea what they are?" he asked. "No, but we need to get the hell out of here," I said, as an instinct took over. I turned away from the deck and headed to the bridge, ready to force the captain to keep moving. But no sooner had I gotten a few steps away than all the lights of the ship fell into darkness, and the sound of the running engines died down. "What the hell just happened?" one of the crewmen said. "Power outage, I guess," another chimed in. Despite the newfound darkness, there was a strange yellow hue hanging in the air that came from the lights below. Though I didn't stick around to admire them, I just kept going towards the bridge. As I got there, I found Captain Harkness alongside our engineers, already working on a solution. They didn't even acknowledge my presence until I stood right next to them. "What are you doing here?" the captain asked. "It's a fair question. I was just one of the many nameless faces aboard the ship, and only certain workers had permission to enter the bridge. If you're here by the outage, we're working on it, so just get back to your station," he continued. "No, Captain, I'm here about the lights in the water," I began before being interrupted. "The lights? They're just a reflection of the night sky or something extra visible. Because of the blackout," he said, though with less confidence that time. I could tell he knew of the stories. "Look, I want to get out of here as much as you do, but with the dead engines, there isn't much we can do. People are already in the engine room trying to restore power, but I can't do any more than that at the moment." With that, he turned away from me and kept walking towards the engineers. I wanted to say more, but I knew he was right. The odd thing was that the backup generators hadn't been activated as expected, and based on the chatter I could overhear there was no structural damage anywhere on the ship. I headed back to the deck. I was overwhelmed by the deafening silence. Thousands of miles away from shore, with absolute zero noise pollution and dead engines, one would expect to hear the drop of a needle, but save from the voices coming from the bridge, there wasn't any sign of life left on board. I quickened my pace, running to where I'd been relaxing with my colleagues just minutes before. As I returned, I only found a couple of them left, all standing frozen in place, staring out to the light below. "Eric, what are you doing?" I asked. He didn't respond, nor did he seem to notice my return. I slowly walked closer, almost nervous to look at the light again. There were so many of them, closer to the surface than ever before. The theory of it being some optical illusion had been shattered, but what scared me more was the trance-like state of the crew. Two of them seemed motionless, yet their faces had streaming tears. I shook Eric gently, and still he didn't respond, but his lips were moving even so slightly, almost as if he were whispering. I moved my ear closer and heard some barely audible mumbles. "I don't want to go, I don't want to go, I don't want to go," he kept repeating over and over again. "Go where?" I asked. "Where are the others?" But he didn't need to respond, because as we stood there, thin, long tendrils emerged from the water, no thicker than a strand of hair, but glowing like the light below. Dozens of them stretched around the man standing next to us, and he made no attempt at escape. As they wrapped around him, they cut through his skin, pulling him over the rails into the ocean. But even before he hit the water, they had cut him to pieces, causing multiple little splashes to be produced as chunks of meat hit the surface. More tendrils rose from the water, trying to grab into Eric, but I dragged him away from the edge, just in time. The impact, we both crashed onto the floor, seemed to break him from the trance, at which point the true gravity of the situation seemed to hit him. We ran away from the edge towards the bridge, hoping to regroup with the rest of the crew. In place of the crew, at the bridge we found were puddles of blood and bits of torn flesh. We stood frozen in fear, neither of us knowing where to go next and how to escape. "Hey, please," a weak whisper says behind us. It was the captain lying against the wall, with an arm missing. "They killed them all, but only got my arm. Then they dropped me. We need to get downstairs. It's the only safe place on the ship." We got the captain back to his feet. Despite his wound, he didn't seem to be bleeding that much. At least not fatally. There were tendrils slithering across the floor of the ship, almost like snakes searching for their next meal. But with a few twists and turns, we managed to make our way into the bowels of the ship. A couple of engineers let us in before we sealed the door behind us. "It won't hold," the captain says. "They cut through the walls of the bridge like butter. Unless we can get the ship going, we're dead." "What the fuck are those things?" Eric asked. "They're called the Lights of Atlantis, but I don't exactly know what they are," I explained.